Welcome, everyone. And everyone, just if you want to just take your happy, sad face just for a moment. Multimodal, seamless mobility, connected trip. How many people are tired of buzzwords and want to just see it happen? Use your faces. Give me your faces. All right. Well, and one last question. How many of you would prefer to use ground transportation rather than fly if you have the opportunity? Absolutely. Good. So I think we've determined that there's a big market ahead for what our panelists are trying to do and what they're doing, because they've obviously invested millions of dollars in connecting and trying to connect all the various pieces of ground transportation to make it easier for us to get around. And we know how challenging that's been, but I want to start with the successes. So I'm going to ask you if you could just quickly tell us what your two biggest accomplishments have been, because here's a market where there's totally fragmented, there's few, if any, standards. So where have you had your biggest accomplishments in offering, say, true interoperability?
So I'll start.
We'll start with you.
Thank you, Lorraine, and it's a great pleasure to be here. So I'll start saying definitely the expansion of our inventory, both in terms of the type of verticals that we've added and enhanced, but also the geographic expansion. So we launched Southeast Asia at the end of last year, so that was a big growth leverage for us. Then the second on the interconnected journeys, which is obviously a great commitment that we want to deliver to our users, was the fact that we truly worked on launching new connected routes. Actually, we launched roughly 200K new routes, putting together different transport modes in one single ticket, right? So putting together different legs, and especially the most used one for us are train plus bus, for example. And then we have also the second one that is very interesting is train plus ferry, which is very unique to us, to provide those solutions that actually are new inventory for the user, right? So something that they couldn't just search and book in one single click and tickets before. So those for us were the big hits.
So new markets, new routes, and able to take different types of transportation and do a single ticket.
Exactly.
And
combining the verticals.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Björn?
Yeah, actually, we at Relio, we made a strategic decision after we got independent 3 years back to focus on one vertical, and this vertical probably with the highest complexity, it's called rail. And we are focusing really on point-to-point, on passes, and on groups. And 5 years, you ask about 5 years. I mean, 5 years in our space, it feels now like probably 2 decades, huh? Because imagine 5 years, it was during COVID. The majority on international rail tickets was still on paper. Huh? 5 years back. So when you ask me about the biggest development for us, yes, we are 100% on e-ticket first. And of course, we unified 200 operators.
Going digital was number one.
Yeah, but it sounds so basic, specifically when we discussed the entire day about aviation and hospitality and so on. We will come back to this later, but the complexity is so super high that now we are very proud to serve on technology the entire B2B travel trade on one API with 200 carriers unified in one backend, fully digital. And this probably was the biggest development and focusing on what we can do best.
Now you're ready to move
meaning
on.
rail.
Right.
Meaning rail.
Right. Very helpful to just focus on the one single, I'm sure. Florent would tell us about how you've expanded your business.
I think for BlaBlaCar, the first success historically is what we've built, which is, for the one who don't know BlaBlaCar, it's a platform of carpooling. So we connect drivers with passengers in a share economy kind of business. And this, just like this, like building a community of over 100 million users in more than 20 countries, putting foreigners putting strangers in your car is a big success. And lately, in the last 5 to 6 years, it's our shift towards multimodality, where we started to integrate first bus and now train inventory too, on top of this carpooling offer that we have.
So integrating carpooling now with rail and bus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So what still needs to happen? We're all excited, we're all waiting for this seamless journey, and even in rail, if you're looking at a single segment, it's still an issue, right? How fragmented the marketplace is. And again, this is a big conversation, but if we can talk about it in just like a few sentences, what needs to happen? And maybe I can just give you some ideas. Like, are we looking at more standards, better standards, improved technology? Is it about cooperation among
Yeah.
various players, right? Is it policy? Like, these are all kind of obstacles in a way. So what needs to happen, Veronica?
Yeah. So I think like the genuine collaboration, right, in the industry is definitely something that needs to be there.
And you come against that a lot, like no, do you get no a lot?
I think it depends, right? There are some very like-minded partners, like the ones that are on the stage. Here's where it's easy to work with, and there are others that they're more difficult and they're a little bit stuck, right, in some dynamics. This is also coming with then the standards of technology or the speed of technology. Like you were saying, how difficult it was actually to actually work one vertical the basics, because it's true, it still is, right, to fix some of the basics technological issue integration that we have with some of the partners. So definitely, I think that even if partners like us or players like us may be accelerating, right, on the technology, on the innovation, the standards and the framework that we have across the industry are still lagging a little bit behind. To bring on top of this other two elements that I think that are very relevant and important for what we are trying to do are also data, and I bring it up every time, data access, equal access, right, for all the operators, so which means that for especially operators like us being able to access to all fares, all options, all details to offer to the user the optimal choices. And then for sure also like some standardization, so some harmonization in terms of the regulatory framework, right, that you have for the consumer while they travel, which is definitely could help us, right, in what we're trying to do.
So that data access comes back to cooperation?
Yes, yeah, as well.
And then standards. Okay. So what else needs to happen to break down barriers, Björn?
I mean, I'm very, very basic on that. It's really standardization and standardization and standardization. And why? I mean, we talk about this for 20 years in rail now.
Right. Well, why are we still talking about it?
Yeah, probably because, of course, let's say the national silos, the world we created specifically in Europe around rail, with state-owned companies focusing on national travelers.
So is it policy that needs to change, regulations?
Actually, it's the policy overall, and definitely on a best-in-case global level, but let's say European level, that companies like us, and I can speak obviously for Rail Europe, not to focus on getting the tech done, so enhancing customer experience at the end. And this is what we do not do in the way we should do it today, because 60-70% of our resources are still on APIs with different carriers and so on. And when we look back on, I mean, what we can learn out of mobility as a service, and when we talk about multimodality, I mean, we all together expected a huge, huge push from mobility as a service during the last 10 years. Why did this not happen? Probably because of three things. First is the customer value is not big enough. It's not there. We can discuss on that a bit later. Second is different interests from carriers, cities, or operators and cities, and we still have this. So I would also underline the collaboration part. But the third part is, of course, missing standardization, specifically on APIs. And if you need to do this job again and again, it's super hard to add the customer value. We need to see the real shift. And we are not talking about a shift between the three of us. We're talking about a shift of people who are not traveling public transport yet.
And are not, right. So you need to sell them on it as well. And that can start with saying that there is that customer demand.
Absolutely.
Okay. Florent?
Yeah, just to build on what was already said about technology, data standardization, I think what we observe, at least in Spain, which is my market, is that this very fragmented mobility sector with a lot of different players, mostly in the bus market, for instance, you really have some very different kind of conversations when you speak to one operator or to another one. And I think in Europe, overall, there are still a lot of operators that need to be convinced that they need technology, that they need platforms like us, that they need marketplace, and that we can bring incremental passengers and incremental activity. And it should be easy. It's actually not that easy when you speak to a lot of them. So the change also needs to come from operators, carriers, and we as platforms need to be able to convince them and show them the value we can bring.
Who are some of the operators and carriers that you really wish would come on board?
I'm not sure I will say any name, but there are some. There are some that are still convinced because they are very at ease in their regional markets. They still depend a lot on offline sales and of their good connection in a particular city or region.
So they're not thinking globally or regionally.
They sometimes do, but they are not taking it as something crucial, which is something that should be crucial for their survival, looking at 5 years or 10 years from now, and they take it very, very slowly. And they don't understand how technology and marketplaces can actually bring them a little plus.
So what I'm understanding is we really need to educate the market a little better about the necessity, but again, it comes from the customer, right? So the customer demand. And I just thought this was an interesting survey, just something I picked up, but nearly 2/3 of business travelers said they would choose travel by train rather than plane if both options were available and the cost and journey time were similar. This is from BCD Travel. So that's 2/3. That's a large percentage. And you saw from here from the audience as well, they would choose ground. So why aren't more people doing that? What do we need to change? What's the mindset that we need to change?
I think the first step is make them aware of what are the options and what are the alternatives, and that's what we really truly believe in, right? So the fact that then we want to empower the user to know that from a specific route they can have, the options on ground, they can have train, they can have bus, can have connection, they can have air, ferry, so that then at least you unlock that step on saying, oh, okay, so I can do this. That maybe is going to take a certain level of time, of budget, and so on. But then you give the customer the control and the power to choose whatever is best, right, for their preferences. But this is the first step to unlock it, right? Also this shift, and we see that when this happens, and also to do that, to provide options, we go back to the problem that we were also mentioning before. It's important that in the market the policymakers also allow for these options to be present, to be more available, so that you provide more alternatives even on ground to consumers, so that then competition, of course, improve innovations, improve also the pricing aspect for the customers. We do see that then when there are those options and they are aware of it, there is a tendency to travel more and to also do the shift towards ground. So we are in Spain, we're looking at some stats, for example, of some of the high-speed routes, right, Barcelona-Madrid here, and we've seen that in the past 2 years and a half, with the introduction of the high-speed train on that, there's been at least, I think, 10 million more passengers on the route versus what we had before, that when was Renfe alone, it took actually 10 years to get to that level of growth, just to see how, the differences. And the shift is going as high as 82% of the traffic to ground versus air on that route, once they are aware and they know that there are those alternatives.
Ron, what does the customer want?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely exactly back what you just said on the BCD survey. We see it exactly what we get back from our customers. When it comes to why someone is choosing the rail option, let's say, and it's not the sustainability part. It's not because, I don't know, I don't have a security check, I can spend 1 hour more or less, and so on. It's still convenience, it's security or safety, and it's price. And of course, the rail industry focused too long on, let's say, the booking and the payment and the operation part of a train journey. That's it. But we did not look on inspiration. We did not look on how we educate people and agents.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. How to get there and to really do it frictionless and seamless. I'm talking about before the booking process. And we did not focus enough on the after sales. And when we ask our customers why they are booking with us, it's exactly this. It's all about convenience, because here we have a direct impact, and here we can add and create real customer value. And this is probably the easiest part when we consider what we listen to today on AI and technology. But for us, it's maybe this kind of game changer, where we can really, increase the utilization rate in European train travel from today 25% to
how can you do that 50? To make it more convenient, make rail more convenient? We need more high-speed rail, right? With some of these longer trips where we say, well, I want to fly because it's just 6 hours on a train, and this is too much for rail.
Of course,
right? How do you
it starts
make it more
with
convenient?
Supply or coverage, because if there are no offers, of course, you cannot sell anything. And I guess we also listened this morning. In 1994, the Eurotunnel was introduced, so the Paris-London line. And if you see how this developed over time, and how there is a real shift from air travel to ground transportation, it's a huge difference. But of course, plenty of investments, lots of investments into rolling stock, into offers, and so on. And we can only add the distribution layer on it, and to make it available globally, technically in the most easiest way for our partners. But it needs to be a balance out of both, and definitely we cannot compromise on the supply and coverage side. if we name ourselves Rail Europe, for instance.
Right, but that layer is very important, so keep improving that. And Florent, tell me, because your market's a little different, your customer's a little different. Tell us a little more about, ride sharing. It was very popular, became very popular like 10 years ago, and now, like, what are the trends, and how are we going to make it a little more broad? So, among various demographic groups and.
Well, it depends on what kind of markets you're talking about, because we are still growing at a very fast pace in some emerging markets. But for instance, in France or Spain, which are some more mature markets in terms of carpooling, carpooling is still growing. It's still growing in Spain, but differently. And I think the example Veronica shared about the Madrid-Barcelona route is very interesting, because for us, with carpool, some, 6-7 years ago, it was one of our top routes in terms of activity of car, traveling from Madrid to Barcelona. After the train liberalization in Spain and the new arrival of low-cost brands and much more offer, it completely decreased, but a lot, during 1 or 2 years. And then when we added on BlaBlaCar the train and the bus offer, this axe grew again, but not only as a whole with network effect, but also only the carpool activity between Madrid and Barcelona actually grew. And I think the key for us as a platform in looking at the future is how we will still growing is how well we will manage to make these three supplies work together. So going from multimodality, which is what we're doing today, we're just showing you different results. You can either pick a carpool, a train, or a bus, to intermodality, when we can make them work together and actually offer you a door-to-door experience by combining maybe a bus and a train, or a bus and a carpool, and stuff like that.
Okay. So that's a good plan. So I want to talk a little bit more about the businesses and your business, because all three of you have raised a lot of money. First of all, I want to ask, where have you invested the capital? And also, what is the environment like for future funding?
Yeah. So I think in the past, and the way we've grown, right, raising money has been a combination of M&A, right? So like we have our companies that we purchased, Rock to Rio, exactly, which is our sister company. But as well, it helped us to create a new business unit, which is our B2B business unit, which is basically now growing very fast year on year and offering new products as white labels to partners and like strong renowned brands. We have around 15 partners by now, which the biggest are Uber, for example, with the Uber partnership that we have in UK and in Spain, which are very successful, or Google, for example. So this helped us to create, right, these three different business units, where we have Rock to Rio that is focused on, the discovery, the research part, right, of the options, and then the B2C, which is obviously the core of the Omio experience, and the B2B. What's next in terms of investment? For sure is going to be double down on growth and expansion. So I mentioned new markets. We have a very aggressive plan to launch other big new markets before the end of the year. So obviously that requires capital and that requires efforts. And then we're also open to different type of options. We are always also looking at the markets, especially in these moments. Also, M&A targets become interesting. So we leave all doors open.
Anyone else?
For us, I think that we had two different phases. First, we used rounds, financial rounds to finance our international growth, so opening new markets. But now we're in a different phase where we're not focusing in opening new markets. We're really focusing on, one, expanding our inventory, so through bus and train offer. And two, through technology, accelerate this transition from multimodality to intermodality. These are our two main focus right now.
And how are you finding the market for future raises?
It's going to be interesting, so to say it diplomatically.
Yeah, for us it's a bit different, because we did not raise any money so far. So we were backed for almost 100 years by SNCF, so the French railways, and since we got independent 3 years back, we started this journey on major three parts, let's say: improving our services, investing in technology, and reaching profitability. And this, we can say, it's checked. So we closed this phase, and we now enter the second phase. And of course, we want to grow, and we will definitely develop further the supply side. Yeah, but it's a bit a different setup.
So profitable, obviously.
Profitable without raising money.
We are
Profitable?
Profitable,
And
yeah.
Profitable?
We've been profitable. We're now in investing phase, so we're not anymore, but we've been.
Okay, because another question I have is like, how come, if this is such a robust business opportunity, how come we don't see Expedia doing it, right? We don't see Booking doing it. We don't see Amadeus doing it. Is it because it's hard?
Because it's hard.
Or because they don't see themselves making enough money doing it?
I think
Or eventually will we see more consolidation and they're just waiting for you guys?
I think my thoughts is that we're seeing some movements towards some level of consolidations where you have some businesses adding an adjacent piece here and there, but the reality is that it's very hard. It's very difficult, so operationally, from a product perspective, from also a market generation, a demand perspective, depending on what's your core targets. So that's why I think the reason why we haven't seen this happening so fast as maybe you would have expected from some of the big player is exactly that.
Why don't the big OTA sell rail? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask
Yes,
you
sure.
that.
No, it's true.
Right?
I mean, at one point, we are quite similar to an OTA, absolutely. But it depends. I mean, we are, as I said in the beginning, it's a super low margin environment, and you need to find your own way to manage your business. And of course, even if we are quite complementary, we are quite different, also in the approaches.
Of course, you are.
And when we look on our customer base, we sell mainly outside of Europe. So we sell to non-Europeans, European train travel. So it means this person travels probably once in her or his lifetime in Europe. Yeah? And of course, we invest a lot in increasing the retention and so on. But of course, making this journey profitable firsthand, this is the first goal. And this is what we need to prove in a way.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're already seeing some consolidation in the market lately. And in Spain, like one of the national first mover in terms of OTA has recently been bought by Trainline, for instance. We as BlaBlaCar, we just bought Obilet in Turkey also very recently. So we're already seeing the first move of consolidation, and there's no doubt that there will be further consolidation.
We're out of time, so this has to be 1 or 2 words. If you had one wish to break down barriers for your business, what would it be? I'm going to start with you, Veronica.
Fast technology innovation, like accessibility, break down like accessibility and blockers across all the players in the industry.
Okay.
Data standards.
Data.
That's it.
Yeah, and technology to work towards intermodality.
Okay. Technology. And let it be said that we had an entire session and you never heard the word AI, so like you don't know
Sure.
that. Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm not sure if this is good or not.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll have to come to that next year. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to our panel, Veronica, Björn, and Florent. Thank you.
Thank you.